The United States, like many other countries, has historically been dominated by male leadership due to a combination of social, cultural, political, and institutional factors. Here's an overview of why the US has not yet had a woman as president and why women have been underrepresented in leadership. 1. Historical and cultural norms. Patriarchal tradition. The US, like many societies, has historically been patriarchal, where men have held dominant positions in power, including political leadership, business, and religious institutions. These long-standing traditions of male dominance have been difficult to overcome, especially in politics. Traditional gender roles. Historically, women were expected to play domestic roles focused on family and caregiving, while men were seen as the public figures and decision-makers. These social expectations have contributed to fewer women pursuing political careers. 2. Political structures and barriers. Male-dominated political institutions. For much of U.S. history, political institutions were almost entirely male, with very few women in positions of power. This created networks of influence, mentorship, and opportunity that largely excluded women. It wasn't until the 20th century that women started to gain more access to political positions. Underrepresentation in government. Although women have made strides, they remain underrepresented in U.S. political institutions. As of 2023, women make up about 27% of the U.S. Congress, which is a significant improvement over previous decades but still far from equal representation. This lack of representation at all levels has made it more difficult for women to rise to the highest office. 3. Political and electoral challenges. Bias and stereotypes. Women candidates often face gendered stereotypes, such as being seen as too emotional or not tough enough to handle national security or economic issues. These perceptions, whether explicit or implicit, can affect how women are perceived by voters and lead to biases during elections. Double standards. Women in politics frequently face a double bind, where they are judged harshly for traits that might be seen as positive in male candidates, such as assertiveness or ambition. For example, a woman being tough might be labeled as aggressive, whereas a man might be seen as strong. Electability concerns. Even as public attitudes have shifted, some voters and party insiders may perceive that a woman candidate is less electable in a general election, leading political parties to prioritize male candidates. 4. Late achievement of political rights. Delayed voting rights. Women in the U.S. only gained the right to vote in 1920 with the passage of the 19th Amendment. This was after more than a century of U.S. elections that excluded women from the democratic process. Gaining political influence takes time, and women started from a position of political disenfranchisement. 5. Lack of precedent. No female presidents. The absence of women in the presidency has a self-reinforcing effect. Since no woman has held the office, some voters may question a woman's ability to be president simply because it's never happened before, reinforcing existing biases. First Lady versus President. Historically, the role of First Lady has been the most visible role for women in the White House, which has often been seen as a supportive, domestic role rather than a leadership position. This, too, reinforces traditional gender roles. 6. Slow progress despite gains. Women in leadership. Although the U.S. has had many prominent women leaders in other roles, such as senators, governors, secretaries of state, like Hillary Clinton, and Supreme Court justices, these gains have been slow and gradual. The challenges women face in gaining political power are similar to those faced by women in other male-dominated fields, such as corporate leadership or the military. Hillary Clinton's candidacy. 2016, Hillary Clinton was the first woman to be nominated for president by a major political party, Democratic Party, in 2016. Despite winning the popular vote, she lost the Electoral College to Donald Trump, highlighting the complexities of the U.S. electoral system and the challenges that remain for women candidates. 7. Global context. International comparisons. Many countries, including the UK, Margaret Thatcher, Theresa May, Germany, Angela Merkel, and New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, have had women leaders. but the US has lagged behind. In some countries, political systems such as proportional representation or party-based systems have made it easier for women to rise to leadership roles than in the US, which uses a two-party system with winner-take-all elections. 8. Social progress and change. Cultural shift. Despite these challenges, attitudes are changing. Surveys show that Americans are increasingly open to the idea of a woman president. Younger generations tend to have fewer biases about women in leadership roles, which suggests that the US may be on the path to electing its first woman president in the coming years. Women's movements such as the women's suffrage movement, the feminist movement of the 1960s and 1970s, and modern movements like Me Too have brought greater awareness to issues of gender equality and have pushed for more women in leadership roles. In conclusion, the US has not been ruled by women primarily due to historical, cultural, and structural factors that have favored male leadership. However, societal attitudes are shifting, and women have made significant strides in political representation. The possibility of a woman president is increasingly likely as more women run for office and gain influence in political institutions.